Alright, hello everyone and welcome to this video. So in this video I want to show you guys how to make an adjustable custom Panhard rod out of your old stock Panhard rod. This is a very cheap-ish way of doing it, probably the cheapest way you can do it if you have a welder. If you don't have a welder, you're probably better off buying a proper one. And I don't trust my welds very much, but I hope you're better at welding, and if you are, here's how to do it. So I got a bit ahead of myself and already cut these without recording anything, but next up we are going to clean them all up and push this bushing out. My one stayed on the axle and remove the Panhard rod, so that's why I don't have bushing in that one. We will be replacing them with polyurethane at some point, so for now let's push this one out. I started to try get the bushing out using a screwdriver and putting it between the metal and the bushing, but that didn't really work, so soon enough I just after I burnt the bushing to a crisp, I had absolutely no problem getting it out. Lovely stuff, so we have both of them with their bushings out. Now this wider one, this is for the part that attaches to the chassis, and that's for the part that attaches to the rear axle. Now let's clean them up. Now that we have both of these tube yokes clean and ready to be welded, here's the plan. I've got this 10mm M16 bolt that I'm going to weld onto the lower ring, so the thinner one that goes on the axle and not the one that connects to the chassis. So I'm going to have to weld that there, but first I think I'm going to make a little channel in the head of the bolt so it sits better. Alright, next up we are going to cut this 1 meter pipe which I got, slightly shorter than the original. Now remember, this is already probably a centimeter shorter because of the way we cut it, but I'd say maybe around here, or like, yeah, because we're going to weld a nut onto there, so that's going to stick out like another centimeter further. And then this is, oh, that's hot first of all, and yeah, we can adjust this at the end. 6 centimeters shorter, since the Panhard rod needs to be shorter anyway, and it will be adjustable, and we will weld the nut on, which will bring it to realistically just 5 and a bit centimeters shorter. So looking back on this, I probably should have cut it like 9 centimeters shorter, since there's no point in having the Panhard rod longer, since we are lowering the car, not raising it. There we go, so I've cut that pipe to the length I wanted it to be, and I've made sure it's all very nice and flat, so it's all like level, so when we weld this nut it won't be like that or like that, or you get the point. So I'm going to try center this up and start welding it on. Alright, so it is the next day. I welded this last night. Now I didn't do the best job, but it will do. It's not very pretty either. But as you can see, I've welded the nut and grinded it onto the bar. There's a thread inside there. There you go, very nice. And this other piece just screws in right there. So pretty much this is how it's going to be adjustable. We can make it shorter by screwing it in, and make it longer by unscrewing it. And then let's say this is the position we want it to be at. We're just going to, well, it's a bit stuck now, I need to free it up. But we're just going to screw that all the way in until it's holding against there. So let me try to show you what I mean. There we go, I've screwed that nut all the way there, and this is very locked now, so that won't be going anywhere. I do still have to clean this up a little bit, especially around the sides here, so when we do put the polyurethane bushing in, it won't leak out. But we can worry about that later, and for now we can weld this other cylinder onto the other end of the Panhard rod just like that. But first let's prep the rod. So it is now the next day. I've welded the other mount onto the other side. It's not very pretty, but I hope it holds. It should hold. The welds seem to be somewhat strong enough. Now I put it up on this line because I want to give it a few coats of primer, followed by some silver paint. And then we're pretty much done, but we need to do the bushings. So let's paint it and see how it looks. Alright, there it is. I've painted the whole Panhard rod. It is pretty much done. We just need to do the bushings. Now, I will definitely be making another one, since I didn't manage to get this one very straight. But it was definitely good practice. So if you're better at fabricating than me, which I hope most of you are, make sure it's very straight if you're going to do this yourself. Now, I will be making another one hopefully in a few months or something. And I don't want to be using this type of bolt. I want to use the reverse and the left hand thread and the right hand thread that you don't have to take off, unscrew and then put back on. But you can actually just wrench it while it's on the car. That would be much easier to adjust. So also this is actually a bit, I think I've made it a bit long, because if you put that there and compare it to this, you can see that there's not a lot of difference from where the bar ends. So the whole point was to make it a bit shorter. I made it a bit too long, I'd say, but I think it should do the job. But next up we can do the polyurethane bushings. So a few weeks ago when I actually recorded that video, I didn't have the polyurethane, but now this arrived. Like, it actually arrived a few days ago, but I couldn't do the Panhard rod because I didn't have this new pipe, which I had to replace when we removed it, because we banjaxed it. There you go. So we had to cut it off because it was stuck to the axle. But I got this, so I got a meter, and I need like 4 centimeters of it. But now we're ready to cut the size we need out of that pipe and mix the polyurethane and pour it into here and let it set. So if we look there, that's about 3.8 centimeters of this tube for the lower Panhard rod mount that we need. Now, I really hope we have enough. I'm not too sure. Also, just to clarify things, for anyone who hasn't realized where this is from, this will sit into there, so on the adjustable end of the Panhard rod. And if we go here to our rear axle, it will slide on right there. And then we're going to secure it down with a nut. I've got the tube marked down where I want to cut it. I've got my safety glasses and my grinder with a brand new disc on it. So let's try make a straight cut. Yeah, that didn't really go to plan. Anyway, a few minutes later, I've managed to get it somewhat straighter using a flap disc. Now, next up, I haven't heard of anyone else doing this, but I believe it might be some sort of an improvement. I'm gonna get I got my cutting disc back on, and I'm going to make some very slight channels here, like little X's. And why I'm doing that is that for when I pour the polyurethane in, I hope it will set within those channels and really just grasp onto the tube a little better. So let's go ahead and give that a go. There we go. That's sort of what I meant to do. Turned out all right. Now, next up, so we have this pretty much all nice and clean, ready to be put into the Panhard rod and the polyurethane to go in. But this one, this still has bits of the rubber from the old bushing on it, and I'm gonna get the flap disc and just grind down the rubber, get rid of it, and I'll probably do the same channel technique on this one too. Well, there we go. We've cleaned all the rubber off and made those little channels. So I guess we could pretty much just clean them up now. So we have both of them here. And I guess we're pretty much to mix the polyurethane and put them into the Panhard rod. Now, very important that we get them into the center, or we get them into the same position as they were before, so that everything falls into place properly and there's an even amount of resistance all around if it's in the center, if that makes sense. So here's what we're gonna do. Alright, so it's voiceover time. What I did was I got one of those plastic lids from one of those like Cadbury sweet boxes and used the soldering iron to make a hole the same shape as the little center pipe and hot glued it down, and this is how I made the mold. Next up, it was time to mix the polyurethane. This right here is what I used. So it's 60 PU rating, which is like kind of the stiffness from what I understand. I will link this in the description if you guys want to use it. There's also stiffer stuff like 80 or something like around there. And it was a 1-to-1 mix ratio. Next up, it was time to mix the polyurethane. So I made 2 lines of 25 milliliters, just so it's a 1-to-1 ratio. It wasn't a perfect mix, but it definitely worked. So that's the first part, and then I'm pouring in the second part. Up to 50. You can see I went just a bit short, should have added a bit more, but after I added that, I mixed it all up together and had to be fairly quick because I only had like 4 minutes before this would start to harden up. Then set up the phone that I was using to record the YouTube videos to film me pouring the polyurethane, and the storage ran out. So these portrait videos will have to be good enough. So there's the polyurethane, and I poured it into the molds and into the other one. Lovely stuff. And waited a few hours so I could pop them out of the mold and fill in with a little bit of extra polyurethane where the hot glue was actually taking up space, so it wasn't really a complete mold. But this is what they looked like once I pour the polyurethane, and then I let them set overnight. And this right here is what they looked like the next day after they fully hardened up. So I'm now outside. Now that we got the bushings done, let's try and mock it up. The rear axle is not there, but let's put this in place and see what it looks like. There we go. Ignore the mess under the car. I'm going to use the wide lens to show you guys what's going on. So we've sandwiched that end of the Panhard rod between the 2 metal parts with the bolt, and you can see it's like dangling up and down. Seems good enough. Back and forth, it's all right. It's definitely not its final position, because I think we should probably sandwich it when it's in this position so that it's like properly in the right place where it's supposed to be. But that looks good for now. I mean, we've mocked it up. We just need to put the rear axle back and all of that. So yeah. Alright, so it's been a few months since I actually filmed that last video, but now we have the rear axle back on the car and the Panhard rod fully attached, and this is what it's looking like now. So that's pretty much the finished product. I've adjusted the Panhard rod there so that the axle is centered with the actual car, and I've given it a shake. It doesn't wobble too much. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Hope you've enjoyed this video or found it somewhat helpful. If you have any more questions, make sure to leave a comment down below or DM me on Instagram. And thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.